So this video, we're just going to answer some questions that seem to be quite popular in the comments section. The first one is about who is Carol. We have friends at home, husband and wife, that we like to hang out with. And come to find out, Al and Carol both are fans of heights and challenges, adventures. Eugene and I tend to prefer to keep our feet on firm ground. And that day, as we walked past that tree, Al commented, "Oh, that looks like a tree that's begging to be walked to see how far I can get out on it." And I told him, "Too bad Carol's not here to join you because I will not be trying to walk out on that tree." So Carol is not a cat. She is a person. She's a dear friend. Another question that kind of was brought up by the whole kind of decency, modesty sort of thing in the shelters. The first day that we walked in rain was a little bit unusual for the fact that we were just drenched. And when we reached the shelter, it was below freezing. And the need to get into dry clothes and avoid hypothermia was more important. However, I did not just shed my clothes right then and there. Al was able to hold a rain jacket up. The other gentlemen in the shelter were very courteous and turned away or became very busy getting things ready in their own area without watching. And so I didn't feel exposed. I felt very respected by everybody. I've become very good at changing when I'm not changing out of wet clothes and changing in my sleeping bag. It's a skill that I think I'm honing pretty good. And so I don't feel immodest or indecent most of the time.
And even the guys do that as well. Change in their sleeping bags, because there are other women besides Sandra there as well. So,
do you want to talk about the ebb and flow kind of trail families?
Yeah, I can. We typically talk about people that we're hiking with. We really don't hike with anybody. I mean, it is difficult to hike with somebody, to find the right gait and pace to keep up with them and carry on a conversation. Very difficult. Me and Sandra hike together intentionally, just so we can stay together.
And even with that, Al has to slow his pace for me because I definitely hike at a slower pace. And sometimes he'll go out ahead of me for a little ways and just kind of wait till I catch up and make sure that I'm still okay.
Yeah, it's just hard when you're walking in a line and not beside each other to carry on a conversation. It's awkward and hard to do and to keep that same pace. So we camp with people, but we don't hike with people necessarily. At night in the shelters, we're all there. We discuss the day. We discuss the next day, who's going to what shelter, how far people are going. And that's kind of where our social life is, at the shelters themselves, which is nice. And occasionally, we typically like to, if we got a time during the day, we'll stop for a half an hour for lunch, take our shoes off, and people will walk by then, stop and talk, or we'll catch people on the trail occasionally and stop and talk there. But yeah, typically we hike by ourselves during the day. And it's interesting, the ebb and flow of the trail. People that are fast, they'll move ahead and you think, well, we'll never see them again. There was Chris, the guy with the husky. We hiked with him for a number of days. He pushed on ahead, and we thought we wouldn't see him again. He ended up getting food poisoning at the NOC, and 2 days later came up behind us again. And so it's just interesting. People you think you won't see again, you end up seeing them. And it's surprising how much news travels. We'll come into town, talk to shuttle drivers, and they'll say, "Oh, well, that person's, scheduled the ride. They're a day behind you. They've scheduled it already." Or this person's 2 days ahead of you. And you can really keep track of what's going on the trail surprisingly well, for no phones really, just by word of mouth. So each shelter has a notebook in it. We've been lax in signing in. They like people to sign in. That's kind of that way who's been through there, just to kind of keep track of people. I haven't seen a lot of people doing that, but each shelter has a notebook in a Ziploc bag that they would like you to sign in at, just to keep track of who's who, just for news sake, I guess, or curiosities.
Well, and sometimes also, we've been traveling with a couple different people, And we decided to zero before the Smokies. Well, Hollis decided not to, and so he pushed on and is ahead of us. However, today, as we were coming out of the Smokies down to Gatlinburg, he was walking up to get back on, and so we were able to stop and talk to him a little bit and kind of catch up.
Yeah, there's a gentleman, he had enough food, Bulldog, to get through the Smokies, so he didn't jump off trail. We're typically hiking with around 9 people right now. 8 of us jumped off. Bulldog had enough food to push through. So hopefully we catch up with him. He's a really great guy. We'd love to spend time with him. So hopefully in the next day, maybe or 2 or a week possibly, we can get back in with him again. So yeah. So yeah, it's trail families and people groups kind of change over time. Sometimes quickly, sometimes not as quick. So nice group that we're with right now. We enjoy all the people. So every walk of life you can think of out here. People are just super humble. It's just, you get to know people at such a deep level quickly. I'm not sure why it is. We're all kind of vulnerable, and it's a raw situation, I guess, maybe. Nobody talks about the news or politics or current events. People just talk about things that matter. People open up very quickly, talk about their families, talk about things that mean a lot to them in their life, and not just frivolous stuff, I guess. Joe, we've been hiking with him for, I don't know, probably 7-8 days possibly. Yeah. I feel like I know more about Joe and his family than I do some of my friends at home. It's crazy, he's just...
Well, and last evening, it was interesting to me how quickly you become connected and concerned, because we knew that stretch was really icy coming down through, and Al and I got into the shelter just before, it was just dusk. It was getting dark, and 2 of the 9 we've been hiking with were not in yet. And at camp, we all continually were looking. It wasn't just Al and I, it was like everybody else in the shelter was looking up the trail, looking and waiting and watching for headlamps, and it was just kind of the sigh of relief when everybody was finally safely there. So you learn quickly to care about other people.
Yeah, truly feels like a family, even though you hardly know these people. So, yeah. And the one guy's he was a high-profile tax attorney. Another guy's a retired Navy SEAL who also worked as counterterrorism in the State Department. Another guy was a retired vet. Another guy worked at the VA. Every kind of walk of life you can think of. It. People are super humble. Nobody brags about what they've accomplished in life, and just great to sit around and talk to people at night. Just a unique experience.
So a couple comments also were about Neroing and zeroing, and concerned about us not taking very many zeros. You can take sort of a zero by Neroing. We're kind of like we did today at noon. If you get off by noon, you have all afternoon, and then if you wait till later in the morning the next day to head out, you have a shorter day the second day. And we're trying that for now. That seems to be working for us. It gives us almost a 24-hour rest period without having to pay for a hotel for 2 nights.
Yeah, we seem well rested with a nice Nero like that. So that may change over time, especially when the weather gets hot. When it's more stressful to hike in the heat, we may need more breaks. But for now, we feel pretty good about where we're at physically.
Thank you again for your comments. And we'll try to answer any other questions that we notice seem to be popular questions down the road.
All right. Good night.